Let's imagine something together tonight. You're walking through a quiet field, and the stars above are clear, soft, and ancient. But beneath your feet lies something even older. Not bones, not just stone, but a memory, still humming in the earth. A time before anything we know had a name. A time when giants breathed, thundered, and vanished. This is the story of the dinosaurs. But not just the T-Rex or the Triceratops you read about in picture books. No, tonight we'll whisper through the hidden corners, the forgotten feathers, the secret forests, the falling skies, and the soft last steps of a world that once ruled this planet and then simply stopped. So if you're lying down, eyes heavy, heart open, let this quiet journey carry you. No rush, no loud turns, just a soft unraveling of a world that once was, and perhaps still is, in small ways. Let's start where all stories begin, with a single step in the mud that never faded. A footstep, frozen in stone. There's something haunting about a footprint, especially one made 150 million years ago. Imagine it. A creature heavier than a truck walks through a riverbed, and the mud for some reason holds it perfectly. Then time forgets to erase it. That moment becomes permanent. Not just a mark, but a whisper. Scientists call these trace fossils, not bones or teeth, but impressions of life, frozen in the silence of stone. The shape of a toe, the distance between steps, the depth of the heel. They all tell a story, not in words, but in weight. Did the dinosaur limp? Was it running? Was it alone? What's strange is how personal they feel. A footprint seems more alive than a skeleton. It feels like someone was just there, like they might return if we turn away. These stone paths don't just show movement, they capture a moment when the earth was soft and time was paying attention. We found these prints in deserts, cliff walls, even under highways. They were never meant to last, but nature kept them anyway. As if the earth itself was trying to remember, or maybe trying to remind us, and in this way, a single step, left behind by accident, becomes beginning of everything we know about them. The time before time had a name. Before the dinosaurs had names in textbooks, before anyone called them Jurassic or Cretaceous, there was just time. Quiet, long, slow time, stretching in every direction like warm water. The earth was young, but already carrying memories too large for language. Back then there were no borders, no cities, no clocks, just shifting winds and rising heat. Oceans covered much of the land, and what little peaked above was lush, steaming, and loud with life. Plants grew strange and towering. Insects the size of birds buzzed through tangled canopies. But the true rulers had not yet arrived. Even the first dinosaurs didn't look like the ones we know. They were small, nimble, curious. They darted like lizards and chirped like birds. Evolution was still experimenting, each generation a quiet edit, a sketch before the masterpiece. What's humbling is how long it took. Not years, not centuries, but millions of seasons. Each heartbeat of the earth carving out new kinds of life. Some disappeared without a trace. Some grew teeth and armor, and a few kept going. This wasn't a time with stories, but the earth, if you listen closely, still tells you what it saw. And what it saw was a world being made from fire, water, and wild hope. Whispers from the layers of earth. Beneath your feet, there are pages, not made of paper, but of pressure and patience. Layers of rock stacked like forgotten books, each one recording a season, a flood, a fire, a death. And in those layers, the bones sleep. Fossils are strange. They are not bones anymore. They're stone that remembers being bone. Minerals seep in slowly, molecule by molecule, until what once was living becomes something else entirely. but the shape stays. That shape can speak if we know how to listen. Some fossils are perfect, claws curled as if gripping their last breath. Others are scattered, bitten, broken, unfinished stories. But together they become a chorus, a whispering crowd from an age that's gone. And sometimes it's not the bones that matter, but what's around them. Seeds fossilized in stomachs, tiny fish teeth inside the ribs of a predator, ash from a volcano dusted gently across a skeleton like snow. It's not just about death, it's about how they lived. You never really find a fossil. It finds you. Hidden for eons, it decides to show itself, just in time for someone to care. And once you see it, you're never quite the same again. When the world was a steamy greenhouse, imagine walking through a forest, but the air is thicker, warmer. The trees are taller than skyscrapers, dripping with vines. Ferns taller than men sway like dancers, and the sky is barely visible through the green. This was Earth during the time of the dinosaurs, a greenhouse world. No polar ice, no winter chill, just humid, heavy air wrapping the planet in warmth. Volcanoes puffed quietly in the distance. The oceans were higher, the weather more wild, and the life more gigantic. Plants had it good. With so much carbon in the air, they grew fast and wide. Swamps spread across continents. Dragonflies soared with wingspans as long as your arm. And into this paradise walked the dinosaurs, not because they were destined rulers, but because the world made room for them. It's strange to think how much the air itself shaped life. Breathing was easier, growth was faster, even the colours were deeper. And in this warm cocoon of green and gold, life became bold. But nature always balances. What made it easy to grow also made it easy to burn. One spark, one shift in the wind, and entire worlds could vanish beneath ash. And yet, life kept reaching upward again and again. The gentle giants that shook the ground. There's something deeply moving about a creature so big, and yet so calm. The sauropods, those long-necked giants, didn't roar or stomp around like monsters. They moved slowly, quietly, as if they knew the earth was listening. Some were longer than planes, taller than buildings, but their eyes were soft. Their lives were spent walking, eating, breathing. They weren't in a rush. With legs like pillars and tails like whips, they wandered ancient plains in slow motion. We often think size means power, but these creatures didn't fight for control. They didn't need to. Their sheer presence was enough. Predators didn't attack them often, not because of aggression, but because... why bother? These giants were like mountains with heartbeats. What's even more fascinating is how light they actually were. Their bones were hollow, their bodies efficient. Evolution didn't just make them large, it made them graceful, balanced, almost elegant. And when they walked in herds, the earth truly felt it. Tremors rolled across the land not from fear, but from rhythm, a living drumbeat of survival. Some of their footprints are still visible today, and when you stand inside one, your whole body fits. It's hard not to feel humbled. Predators with eyes like fire. In every quiet paradise, something watches. The giants grazed and wandered, but in the shadows, something smaller, sharper, always waited. Predators were not the rulers of this world. They were its tension, its balancing force, its teeth. The theropods, like Allosaurus and eventually Tyrannosaurus, weren't just mindless hunters. They were thinkers, stalkers. Their eyes faced forward, built for depth, distance, and decision. Their brains were wired for tracking movement, sensing fear, and seizing the second it arrived. But they weren't always large. Some were no bigger than a dog, fast and clever, travelling in pairs or packs. They whispered through forests, blended with shadow, and left behind trails of broken twigs and silence. You wouldn't hear them until they were too close. Fossils show signs of strategy: healed wounds, worn teeth, patterns in bones that suggest ambush, cooperation, even rivalry. These weren't monsters, they were survivors. And in survival, nothing is accidental. Even their roars, if they had them, may not have been what you think. Some scientists believe they hissed, growled, or boomed low like crocodiles. Not loud, but deep, enough to make your chest shake from the inside. And when they looked into the eyes of prey, they didn't blink. Feathers in the forest, wings in waiting. If you close your eyes and imagine a dinosaur, what do you see? Scales? Claws? Roaring mouths? Maybe. But the earth has a softer memory, one lined with feathers. Yes, feathers. Bright, delicate, colourful feathers. Not just on birds, but on dinosaurs we once thought were fierce and scaly. Fossils found in China and elsewhere show imprints, beautiful halos of plumage, preserved for millions of years in volcanic ash. These weren't for flying, not yet. They were for warmth, for display, for communication. Some even changed colour in light, a quiet show of evolution's imagination. Nature was rehearsing something new, something that would one day touch the sky. Some small raptors had long feathers on arms and tails. Their bones were hollow. Their balance was perfect. They ran, leapt, glided, and failed. Again and again. But something in them wanted to lift off the ground. It's strange to think that the same forest where a dinosaur chased insects might one day echo with the wings of birds. The past wasn't ending. It was preparing. And when the wind rustles leaves, perhaps it still remembers the first flap. Volcanoes that breathed the sky. Sometimes the earth itself roars louder than any creature. During the age of dinosaurs, volcanoes didn't just shape the land, they shaped life. Giant eruptions darkened skies, poisoned rivers, and painted entire continents with ash. But they also created new lands, new climates, new chances. There were periods when volcanic activity stretched for thousands of years without rest. One region in what is now India, the Deccan Traps, spilled lava across an area larger than modern France. Over and over, layer upon glowing layer. That heat changed the atmosphere. It made the air thick with gases, the oceans warmer, the seasons wild. Some species vanished slowly, unable to adapt. Others took their place. Volcanoes weren't just destroyers, they were editors. And after the fire faded, something magical often happened. The ash made the soil richer. Ferns returned first, then forests, then the animals. It's as if the earth, after breaking, always tried to heal. But in the darkest moments, when the sky was black and the sun didn't rise, even the strongest dinosaur might have paused, listening for the next tremor beneath their feet, and wondering if the mountain would breathe again. Continents on the move beneath their feet. If you could peel the earth like an orange, you'd see something odd. The ground isn't still. It moves, slowly, silently, always, like deep sleep turning in bed. Back when dinosaurs ruled, the Earth's continents weren't where they are now. They were still part of a giant landmass, Pangaea. One supercontinent, one body. But over time, cracks appeared. The plates drifted. The land began to pull apart. This wasn't fast, an inch or two a year. But for creatures that lived for tens of millions of years, it mattered. Oceans grew between them. Mountains rose. Climates shifted. Species became isolated. Some adapted, some vanished. A dinosaur in what's now South America might once have shared a cousin with one in Africa, until the oceans said otherwise. And so, evolution split paths. What began as one story became many. We can still see the match today. Fossils of identical creatures on opposite sides of the world. Bones that prove the Earth was once whole, then broken, then reshaped, and beneath every step the dinosaurs took, the land was breathing, stretching, drifting, without ever asking their permission. The secret lives of herds and packs. We often imagine dinosaurs as solitary, standing alone in paintings or skeletons, but the Earth remembers them as social beings, creatures that lived not just in landscapes, but in relationships. Fossilized trackways, long trails of footprints, show multiple dinosaurs walking together, side by side, for miles. Some large, some small. Parents and children, maybe even friends. They moved with rhythm, as if they knew they belonged together. Nests found in ancient sediment contain dozens of eggs in circles, not scattered, but placed, carefully. Some even show signs of brooding, adults guarding the young, shielding them with their bodies. Love has deeper roots than we think, and predators too. They didn't always hunt alone. Fossils suggest that some raptors coordinated attacks, moved in formations, not unlike wolves or soldiers. There are no fossils for emotion, no bones for trust, loyalty, or grief. But sometimes, when you find the remains of a herd that died together, untouched by scavengers, it makes you wonder, did they wait for each other, even at the end? And if so, what else did we miss about their hearts? The ocean was not a safe place, either. While giants roamed the land, the oceans had their own kings. But these were no slow-moving sauropods. In the water, everything was quicker, sharper, more ancient. Creatures like Mosasaurus and Pliosaurus glided beneath the waves like shadows with teeth. Some were longer than buses, built like torpedoes, armed with jaws strong enough to snap through bone. Their eyes were cold, always searching. These weren't dinosaurs, not exactly. They were marine reptiles, cousins, and their world was just as rich. Coral reefs towered like underwater forests. Jellyfish floated like glowing lanterns. And in the distance, the silence of ambush waited. Even flying reptiles like pterosaurs had to watch the sea. One wrong swoop, one splash too close to the surface, and they were gone. The ocean didn't roar, it whispered, and then it swallowed. Fossils from these depths are often beautifully preserved. The bones of entire creatures locked in limestone, as if frozen mid-swim, some even with last meals still in their bellies. We forget sometimes that danger isn't only on the land, and the most terrifying monsters, they never made a sound. Dinosaurs of the darkness and cold. Not all dinosaurs lived in tropical forests and warm open plains. Some made their homes at the edges of the world, in twilight zones where cold crept early and darkness stretched longer than light. In what we now call Antarctica and Alaska, fossils show that dinosaurs lived and thrived even near the poles. There were no ice caps back then, but the seasons were still harsh. Months of sun followed by months of shadow. Some dinosaurs here were smaller, fur-covered, and more alert. Their eyes may have been larger to gather more light, their bodies adapted to colder nights. Maybe they huddled for warmth. Maybe they migrated when winter whispered too loudly. And yet, they stayed, not just for a season but for generations, nesting, feeding, living. It tells us something deeply beautiful, that life doesn't just seek comfort, it seeks belonging. The bones found in these regions are often harder to reach, but when unearthed, they carry a special kind of reverence, as if they endured more, as if they held on longer. Even in the deepest cold, something wild kept beating beneath their ribs. How baby dinosaurs learned to survive. The world of dinosaurs was vast and dangerous, filled with teeth, heat, storms, and shifting lands. And yet, every single giant began as something tiny, fragile, waiting inside an egg. Some of these eggs were no bigger than grapefruits, others larger than a football, but inside each one a heartbeat fluttered, a new story, a new risk, a chance that the future might still continue. Fossilized nests have been found with remarkable detail, some with eggs still clustered together, some with hatchlings frozen mid-crawl, and in the surrounding dirt, footprints, likely from adults. Standing guard, watching. It seems many dinosaurs didn't abandon their young. They taught them, led them, protected them, at least for a while. In some species, juveniles stayed close for months, maybe years, learning where to eat, when to run, how to listen. We often picture these creatures as savage and simple, but raising young in such a brutal world requires strategy, patience, and maybe even love. Imagine the first step of a baby sauropod, wobbly, new, the whole world looming over it, and yet it walks, because something taught it to. The sounds that echoed across ancient valleys. Close your eyes. What did a dinosaur sound like? Not the Hollywood roar, but the real ones, the quiet ones, the ones that echoed across dawn-lit valleys, bounced off cliffs, and vibrated through trees. We may never know exactly, but science has clues. Some skulls had hollow chambers, like trumpets built into bone. These could have made low, vibrating bellows, sounds that didn't just travel through air, but through the ground itself. Some may have clicked, or hissed, or cooed like modern birds. A mother calling to her young, a warning cry at dusk, a soft rumble in the dark. Sound was survival, but also connection. In a world without cities or cars, sound travelled differently. You could hear things from miles away. Footsteps, wings, a cracking branch. Everything was sharper, closer, more personal. Fossils don't capture sound, but sometimes, when standing near a dinosaur skeleton in a museum, something stirs in the imagination. Not a roar, but a whisper. Fossils are just bones until you listen. Fossils aren't just old bones, they're locked stories. And like any story, they only come alive when someone chooses to listen. A rib is more than a rib. It's proof that something once breathed. A tooth isn't just for chewing, it's a map of hunger, of battle, of instinct. A broken tailbone might tell of a fall, a healed fracture, of survival. But fossils are quiet. They don't demand attention. They sit, buried for eons, waiting for someone with patience. Someone who doesn't just see, but feels. A paleontologist is part detective, part poet. They dust, brush, scan, but they also imagine. The Earth doesn't reveal its past easily. Some bones are found by accident, a landslide, a child playing, a curious explorer. Others take decades, and even then the picture is never complete. But when a fossil is placed together, bone by bone, and the shape takes form, there's a silence in the room, a stillness, as if the past is exhaling. Because fossils are not the end of a story, they're the part where we begin to care. A sudden flash in the sky. It was just a moment, one brilliant flash, one streak across the sky, something ancient and cold, moving impossibly fast, aimed at a blue planet that never saw it coming. This is the moment many believe changed everything. A giant asteroid nearly the size of a city, striking what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It didn't knock, it crashed. Hard, with the force of 1 billion atomic bombs. The impact boiled oceans, ignited forests, and sent vaporized rock into the sky. The heat was instant, but it was the darkness that followed, that truly ended worlds. Ash and dust filled the atmosphere, blocking sunlight for months, maybe years. Photosynthesis paused, plants withered, the food chain cracked from the bottom up, and the once mighty giants had no more ground to stand on. Not all life died that day, but something deep within the rhythm of Earth shifted forever. And what followed wasn't just an ending, but the quiet beginning of a world without them. The day the sky didn't light up again. Imagine waking up and the sun never rises. The clouds are thick, but not like rain clouds. These are filled with sulfur, soot, and shattered rock. For days, weeks, months, everything is grey, then black. The air becomes colder. Plants stop growing, and silence spreads across every horizon. This was the aftermath, the long winter after the asteroid strike. Some call it the impact winter, a time when survival meant more than strength. It meant hiding, it meant adapting, and most dinosaurs weren't made for it. They had ruled a world of warmth, of plenty. Their size, once their gift, became their burden. They needed too much, and the Earth had stopped giving. Fossil evidence shows rapid extinctions. Bones vanish from layers of sediment. Entire species disappear like breath on glass. The world didn't burn all at once. It froze in silence. And yet, in the cold, in the corners, some hearts kept beating. The story didn't end. It just turned the page. Ash that fell like snow for years. Ash is light, but it carries weight. After the impact, the skies rained particles, fine, grey, endless. Not fluffy like snow, but sharp. Toxic. Everywhere. The trees wore it like grief. Rivers turned murky. The soil changed. The air, once sweet with forest and ferns, turned bitter. And in that ash, entire ecosystems collapsed. Even those who survived the initial blast found their world unrecognizable. The plants they ate were gone. The warmth they knew had faded. And the balance that had lasted for millions of years broke. But this ash also preserved things. Like ancient Pompeii, it locked creatures mid-motion. Some dinosaurs are fossilized in postures of fear, heads twisted, limbs stretched, as if still trying to run. There's something deeply human about the ash. It reminds us how fragile everything is, how a sky once filled with colour can fall, in silence. And yet, beneath it all, seeds still slept, waiting. Survivors in the shadows. Not everything vanished. While the giants fell, smaller creatures found cracks to hide in. Holes in trees, burrows in the ground, tight places the sky couldn't reach. These were the survivors, the overlooked, the underestimated. Tiny mammals, birds with beaks instead of teeth, reptiles who needed little. It wasn't just luck, it was timing, size, and resilience. They ate less, lived faster, adapted quicker. While giants starved, these creatures shifted. We found fossil burrows with remains inside, tiny skeletons that once curled up and waited out the dark. Some birds flew far, clinging to warmer zones. Others lost their wings entirely and walked forward instead. It's tempting to mourn what was lost, but there's beauty in what endured. Survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, software patient. And those survivors, they carried something forward, a thread of life that would become something else entirely, something new, the world that tried to heal. After every fire comes green. It didn't happen overnight, but eventually light returned. The ash settled, rain fell, and from the cracks came leaves. The earth is old, but it never gives up. Ferns sprouted first, as they always do. Then flowering plants, small and defiant. Insects returned, birds sang again, and mammals, once tiny, timid, began to stretch, climb, explore. The dinosaurs were gone, but not all of them. Some, the feathered kind, still clung to the trees, still chirped, still glided, and over time they would become the birds we know now. The sky didn't forget. New animals emerged. The age of reptiles gave way to the age of mammals. Ecosystems reshaped themselves. Nature filled the empty spaces not with sorrow, but with growth. Even now, when you walk through a forest, feel a breeze, or watch birds spiral at sunset, you're witnessing the earth's slow, steady healing. It remembers, it rebuilds, and sometimes it even forgives. What happened to the last roar? No one knows when it happened. There wasn't a countdown, no final parade, just a last breath somewhere, a last footprint pressed into cooling mud, a final call echoing across a quiet valley that no one heard. The last non-avian dinosaur didn't know it was the last. It simply walked, searched for food, maybe called to others, and the silence that answered back must have felt strange. Somewhere in the fossil record there's a layer, a thin line of dust and ash. Below it, life rich with creatures we now call prehistoric. Above it, a world that moved on. It's strange how endings rarely feel like endings in real time. They're soft, gradual, like a candle running out rather than being blown out. Maybe the last dinosaur didn't go with a roar, but a slow hush. And even now, the earth holds that silence with tenderness, as if it's still listening, just in case it ever returns. Tiny creatures with big futures. While the giants vanished, something small stirred in the underbrush. Mammals, once background characters in the dinosaur age, began writing a new script. They'd lived in shadows, burrowers, night runners, seed-eaters. But now the world had space, and they filled it slowly, quietly. They didn't rush to become lions or whales. First came things like shrews, small, soft, fast. They nursed their young, taught them, protected them. The world no longer belonged to the loud, it belonged to the clever. Fossils show rapid mammalian evolution after the dinosaurs' fall. New shapes, new teeth, new behaviors. They climbed, swam, tunneled, experimented with life. And the sky, now calmer, began to echo with chirps from birds, descendants of dinosaurs who had grown lighter, faster, more colourful. It wasn't a replacement, it was a rebirth. And it reminds us, sometimes the ones you overlook are the ones who inherit the future, because strength isn't always measured in size. Sometimes it's in the softness that survives, from clawed feet to beaked wings. The idea sounds impossible, that dinosaurs still walk among us. But they do. Every time a bird lands on a branch, pecks at the ground, or lifts into the sky, it carries ancient blood in its veins. Modern birds are direct descendants of feathered dinosaurs. It's not just a theory, it's written in their bones, their hollow skeletons, their three-toed feet, even the way they hatch from eggs. Some birds, like chickens, share genetic traits with raptors. Their stance, their movement, their instincts. If you look close enough, the past peers back. Fossils of Archaeopteryx and others show the gradual shift, claws becoming wings, teeth becoming beaks, scales turning to feathers. Evolution didn't draw a line, it painted a blur. Birds don't just remind us of dinosaurs, they are dinosaurs, just smaller, lighter, filled with song instead of roar. Next time a sparrow chirps outside your window, know that it echoes a voice that once filled ancient forests, a voice that never fully faded. The ghost of dinosaurs in modern birds. Watch a heron glide. Watch a hawk lock eyes. Watch a chicken scratch the ground with fierce focus. And in those movements, something ancient stirs. Birds don't just look like dinosaurs, they carry memory in their muscles, instincts buried beneath feathers, reactions shaped over millions of years. You can almost feel the echoes of claws, the the pull of tails long gone. Science has mapped this link deeper than ever, from wishbones to feathers to sleeping posture. Birds preserve behaviours their ancestors relied on. Even the way they balance, the way they nurture young, it's all familiar, all inherited. When you see a flock take off together, coordinated and wild, it's hard not to imagine a pack of feathered raptors moving through ferns, alert, intelligent, connected. They don't live in the past, but they carry it. Every wing beat is a memory in motion, and maybe, just maybe, that's why their songs feel so old, why dinosaurs never really left us. Dinosaurs didn't disappear, not completely. They changed. They whispered forward. They left behind clues and cousins. In birds they fly. In crocodiles they lurk. In lizards they flick tongues of ancient code. And in us, in humans, maybe they live as questions. Why are we so drawn to them? Children know their names before they know the capitals of countries. Grown-ups build museums, movies, models, all trying to remember something we never lived through. It's because they're not just science, they're story. They remind us of time, vast, humbling time, of rise, of fall, of what it means to be part of a world that's always evolving. We hold their bones in our hands and we feel small, but not in a bad way, in a way that connects us, because we are not outside of history, the beauty in Extinction's puzzle. Extinction sounds like an ending, but in nature, it's also a transition, a pause between songs, a clearing of the stage so something else can step forward. When dinosaurs vanished, the world didn't go dark, it just changed colour. It shifted tone. The silence they left behind allowed other voices to rise. Insects, birds, mammals, flowers, each taking space that once belonged to giants. And yet, we're still drawn to their absence, as if some part of us is always trying to fill that missing puzzle piece, wondering why they were here, why they left, why we remained. The word extinction carries sadness, but it also carries clarity. It teaches balance, that no form of life is promised tomorrow, that even the strongest, the tallest, the loudest are still part of Earth's breath. Inhale, exhale. Dinosaurs remind us that nothing lasts forever, but also that memory can be more lasting than form, and in that there is strange beauty. How we dug up lost worlds with brushes. It begins not with a shovel, but a whisper, a bump in the rock, a strange curve, a shimmer that doesn't quite belong. Paleontologists don't dig, they reveal, they uncover, slowly, carefully, like archaeologists of deep time. They use brushes more than hammers, because fossils are fragile, not just in bone, but in meaning. One wrong touch and millions of years can crumble. The process is slow, painfully slow. Weeks spent dusting a single vertebra. Months spent mapping its placement. Years spent assembling just one skeleton. And even then, it's a guess. A best fit story. A carefully stitched dream. But those who do it love it. They're not just scientists, they're time listeners. People who spend their lives talking to stone, hoping it talks back. And sometimes, it does. A new species. A missing link. A baby preserved in its shell. A feather pressed like a sigh into shale. These discoveries don't just change textbooks, they change how we see the world itself. What fossilized nests still teach us. In the dustiest corners of ancient rock, sometimes you find something tender. A nest. Not just eggs, but placement, pattern, intention. Fossilized dinosaur nests show circles, layers, arrangements that suggest care. Mothers who chose the right ground, who guarded the eggs, who maybe even fed the hatchlings after they cracked the shell. It's a reminder that dinosaurs weren't just wild machines, they were parents. They had instincts that weren't only about hunger or dominance, but about continuation, about giving the future a chance to breathe. Some nests have eggs that never hatched, frozen mid-dream. Others have broken shells and tiny bones, suggesting the young made it out and maybe even ran their first steps nearby. These nests are quiet. They don't roar. They don't demand headlines, but they say something powerful, that even in a dangerous, chaotic world, some creatures still pause to nurture. And that kind of love, it survives in stone, the colour of a dinosaur's skin, a guess or a clue. For most of history, we imagine dinosaurs grey, brown, dull, like walking tanks with no paint. But nature rarely works in grayscale. And recently, something surprising was found. Melanosomes, pigment cells, preserved in fossil feathers. Some dinosaurs, it turns out, may have been bright, iridescent, covered in reds, blues, even shimmering greens. Not for camouflage, but for display, for recognition, for beauty. This discovery doesn't just change how they looked, it changes how they behaved. Colour isn't just surface, it's communication. It tells stories without speaking. Were some striped, spotted? Did a certain hue mean danger, attraction, identity? We may never know exactly, but now, when artists paint dinosaurs, they imagine the jungle alive with colour. They give raptors midnight feathers, give duckbills flashes of orange. And somehow, it feels right, because life has always expressed itself boldly, loudly, beautifully, even in creatures we once thought were only shadows. How ancient bones speak in museums. When you walk into a museum and see a full dinosaur skeleton, you pause, not just because of its size, but because of the stillness. It's a stillness that speaks. Every bone has been placed with care, every arch of the neck, every curve of the tail, reconstructed not just for science, but for emotion. These aren't just fossils, they're encounters between us and time. Museums don't just preserve facts, they preserve feeling. That moment when a child walks in and stares up at a towering T-Rex, that tiny gasp, that moment of becoming small and feeling safe in the awe. Some skeletons are complete, others are filled in with replicas. But that doesn't matter, because what we're really looking at is possibility, a physical connection to a world we'll never walk through. And in that quiet room, under soft lights, the bones speak. They don't say, "Fear me," they say, "I was here." The war's over a dinosaur's name. You'd think naming a dinosaur would be peaceful, but the truth is, it's anything but. In the 1800s, two famous paleontologists, Edward Cope and Othniel Marsh, entered what's now called the Bone Wars. It wasn't fought with swords, but with shovels, rivalry, and pride. They raced to discover, to name, to claim. Sometimes they rushed so fast they made mistakes. Bones were misidentified. Species were named twice. Entire skeletons were reconstructed. Wrong. But in that chaos, something unexpected bloomed. Attention. Dinosaurs went from forgotten bones to stars. Museums expanded. Funding poured in. Children dreamed of digging. And today, the echoes of those old battles still linger. Scientists debate names, argue over classifications, challenge each other's interpretations. Not out of arrogance, but passion. Because every name holds power. It tells a story. It gives a creature, long gone, a voice again. And sometimes, even bones need defenders. When paleontologists disagree, science isn't always agreement. In fact, some of its greatest progress comes from polite disagreement. Did Tyrannosaurus have feathers? Could some dinosaurs swim? Were they warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Each of these questions stirs fierce debates, Paleontologists examine bones like puzzles with missing pieces, and each piece can be interpreted a little differently depending on who's holding it. But this isn't failure, it's the process, because fossils are whispers, not speeches, and every new dig site, every new scan, every fossilized clue adds just one more word to the sentence. Sometimes a disagreement lasts decades. Then one fossil, one oddly preserved bone, changes everything, and the community adjusts, reshapes, refines. There's humility in that. A reminder that we're not telling these creatures who they were. We're asking, gently, repeatedly, and slowly, patiently, they answer. The Jurassic Park effect. Then came the movies. When Jurassic Park hit screens in 1993, the world's view of dinosaurs changed overnight. They were no longer dusty bones in museums. They were alive, terrifying, majestic, and deeply, deeply cool. But Hollywood took liberties. Velociraptors were made bigger. T-Rex's vision was dramatized. Feathers were removed. Behaviors were exaggerated. It was entertainment, not education. Still, something magical happened. A whole generation fell in love with paleontology. Toy stores filled with fossils. School projects turned into excavation dreams. Museums saw more visitors. Dinosaur books flew off the shelves. Scientists call this the Jurassic Park effect, where fiction fuels curiosity and curiosity leads back to truth. Even if the movie wasn't perfect, it opened the door. And once that door opened, many never looked back. Even now, some paleontologists admit, it all started with a roar in a theatre seat, how dinosaurs changed science itself. Dinosaurs didn't just teach us about the past, they changed how we do science. Before them, fossils were misunderstood. Some were thought to be dragons, others biblical relics. But as paleontology evolved, dinosaurs became a model of how to ask big questions, how to work across disciplines, geology, biology, chemistry, even astronomy. To study a dinosaur, you don't just dig. You analyze isotopes, scan with lasers, compare genomes, model ecosystems. Dinosaurs became the bridge between ancient Earth and modern possibility, and they influenced other fields too. Climate science uses their extinction to understand atmospheric change. Evolutionary biology learns from their diversity. Even robotics has looked at dinosaur movement for design inspiration. These creatures, long gone, are still shaping human innovation. Their bones echo not just in rock, but in labs. And perhaps that's their greatest legacy, not just how they lived, but how they continue to teach. The missing chapters still underground. For all we've discovered, most of the story is still buried. Only a tiny fraction of dinosaur species have been found. Many never fossilized. Others remain hidden in stone, deep under fields, deserts, oceans, waiting silently. Some fossils erode just before we reach them. Others hide in private lands, never to be touched. There may be entire creatures, whole families, behaviors, appearances we'll never know. And that mystery is oddly comforting, because it means the past isn't finished. There are still secrets underfoot, still stories curled into rock, asleep for millions of years, dreaming of sunlight. It also humbles us, reminds us that we don't hold the full truth, just glimpses, shadows on the wall. But each discovery brings light, and with every new bone, the picture grows richer. And one day somewhere, a child might dig in their backyard, and history might change. Why children dream of T-Rexes? It's curious, isn't it? Long before they can spell paleontologist, children can say Tyrannosaurus rex. They know the shape, the teeth, the growl. They draw it with crayons, play with plastic versions, sleep under dinosaur bedsheets. But why? Maybe it's the scale. The idea of something huge, wild, real, and gone. Or maybe it's the mystery, the drama, the open-endedness of it all. Dinosaurs are both monsters and memories. They don't fit into tidy boxes, and that excites young minds. But beneath that excitement, there's awe. Children feel it more freely than adults. That deep, slow-breath wonder when you learn something existed before you, before people, before stories had words. It's also safe, a kind of fear that comes without danger. They can imagine being chased by a raptor, but still fall asleep smiling. And somewhere, tucked inside that fascination, is a lesson that the world is older, bigger, and more surprising than anyone told them. Dinosaurs are proof that even the impossible once was. Were dinosaurs smart or just strong? Strength is easy to measure. Size, teeth, speed. But intelligence, that's harder. And with dinosaurs, it's still unfolding. Some, like sauropods, had tiny brains compared to their bodies. But they didn't need strategy, they needed stamina. Others, like troodontids and some raptors, had surprisingly large brains for their size. Good vision, agile movement, hints of problem solving. Did they plan? Did they cooperate? Could they learn? We'll never know for sure, but fossils leave clues. Trackways that suggest coordinated movement. Evidence of nesting, protection, maybe even play. Intelligence isn't always in tools or language. Sometimes it's in adaptation. And then there are birds, dinosaur descendants, who solve puzzles, mimic speech, and show memory. That tells us the roots of intelligence may have run deeper than we guessed. So perhaps dinosaurs weren't just strong. Perhaps some of them were thinkers. The gentle truth behind the ferocious roar. The media loves the roar. Teeth, speed, blood, power. That's the version of dinosaurs we're shown again and again. But the truth may have been quieter, more balanced. For every predator, there was a peaceful grazer. For every dramatic hunt, there were hours of wandering, resting, parenting. Some dinosaurs likely coexisted peacefully, shared land, avoided conflict, and even predators weren't just brutes. They were animals, complex, maybe even emotional. They mourned, retreated, bonded, raised young. Their ferocity was survival, not cruelty. Fossils show healed wounds. That means care, recovery, time taken to rest instead of fight. It softens the story, because maybe the age of dinosaurs wasn't a battlefield. Maybe it was a community. And maybe when the forests grew still at dusk, even the fiercest among them paused, to breathe, to listen, to be. How dinosaurs measured time. Without a clock, no watches, no calendars. But dinosaurs still measured time, in the way nature always does. They followed light, the warmth of morning, the length of shadows, the pull of seasons. Migration routes weren't marked with signs, they were written in stars and wind and instinct. Eggs were laid during certain moons. Herds moved as rivers rose or dried. The tilt of the earth whispered when to rest and when to roam. Even their bones show growth rings, like trees. Each ring a pause. A season survived. A memory stored in calcium. They didn't know years, but they knew rhythm. Knew when to nest, when to run, when to wait. And in that way, their sense of time may have been more natural than ours. Because when you live by the earth, time is not numbers. It's feeling. What a dinosaur might have dreamed. It's a strange question, but not as strange as ignoring it. Did dinosaurs dream? Their brains had REM-like structures. Some slept curled like birds. Others rested in herds, protected from harm. If modern reptiles and birds dream, why not them? And if they did, what would those dreams hold? A forest they knew well? The sound of thunder herds in the distance? The warmth of a sun after the storm? Or maybe just the rhythm of their own breath, slow and ancient, humming with life? Dreams aren't just for storytellers, they're for the remembering, the processing, the deep invisible threads that tie experience together. And if even for one night a dinosaur closed its eyes and saw something beyond survival, then maybe it wasn't so different from us after all. Echoes of footprints in dried riverbeds. Long after the bodies are gone, sometimes the footsteps remain. In places where ancient rivers once flowed, where mud once hugged every toe print, we find dinosaur tracks, clear, delicate, echoes in stone. Some show a single traveller, others reveal a family, a herd, a chase, a pause. They're not dramatic, not fossils of teeth or horns or claws, but they're intimate, a trace of motion, a moment frozen. One step tells you size, two tell you direction, a trail tells you a story, how fast they moved, if they stumbled, if they were being followed. In some places you can still stand inside those footprints. Feel your shoes disappear inside a space where once a living creature pressed down with weight and breath and purpose. It's hard not to whisper when you do, because the earth remembered. Long after the rain, long after the sun, it kept the moment and waited. The chemistry locked inside a tooth. A dinosaur's tooth isn't just sharp, it's informative. Hidden inside its enamel is chemistry, traces of diet, environment, and life. Elements tell scientists what it ate, where it drank, what kind of terrain it lived on. Carbon, oxygen, strontium, all woven into the structure like an invisible journal. Even the wear on a tooth tells a tale. Scratches from plants, chips from bone, rounded edges from age, a clean break from battle. Some predators replaced teeth constantly, like sharks, rows and rows waiting their turn. Others had specialized teeth for slicing, crushing, grazing. And when we find them fossilized, they're perfect, still sharp, still gleaming, still whispering secrets that only microscopes can hear. It's humbling, really, that something so violent in life can become so gentle in memory, because inside that tooth is an entire world of ancient choices. The tragedy of the last herd. In one fossil site we find many dinosaurs together, all facing the same direction, all buried at once. What happened? Maybe they were migrating, caught in a flash flood, or trapped in a volcanic plume. Maybe they sensed danger, ran together, and fell together. We'll never know exactly, but we call it the last herd, because something about it feels emotional, not just a group of animals, a community. Some were young, some old, their bodies protectively arranged, not random, intentional. You can feel the urgency even millions of years later. These mass grave sites remind us that extinction didn't come for individuals. It came for relationships. Creatures who lived beside one another, protected one another, died beside one another. We don't know what their last moments felt like, but we know they weren't alone. Could a dinosaur live in today's world? Imagine it, a dinosaur alive today, not in a cage, not in a lab, but walking, breathing, blinking beneath modern skies. Could it survive? Maybe for a moment, but not for long. The world has changed too much. The air is different. The plants have shifted. Even the insects that once buzzed near their skin are gone. Cities hum. Lights drown the stars. Noise never stops. Could a creature used to ancient forests or volcanic plains make sense of this new earth? And yet, part of us still longs for it, to see them live, move, react. Not as monsters, but as animals, present, real. Still, perhaps the kindest thing is that they're gone, not forgotten, just spared from what we became, because some stories are meant to be finished and remembered, not restarted. The silence after their last song. Every age has its sound. The dinosaur age? It must have been loud. Roars, thuds, rustling ferns, flapping wings, the calls of creatures we'll never truly know. But after the impact came silence, a long, haunting pause. No more footsteps through the forests, no more low calls across valleys, no more thunder from moving herds, just wind, ash, and the quiet reshaping of the world. It's that silence that still lingers, because sound is memory, and when it's gone, we begin to listen deeper, in bones, in fossils, in empty footprints, searching for a hum that no longer plays. But perhaps silence is part of their legacy, a soft ending, a respectful hush, like the closing of a book, just before the next one begins. Even after extinction, dinosaurs left footprints on the future. Birds, of course, still soar with their feathers and grace. But it's deeper than that. Ecosystems reshaped in their absence. Mammals expanded into the roles they left behind. Predators, grazers, scavengers, all took cues from what dinosaurs once mastered. Even plants changed. Flowering species rose after the fall. Forests rewrote themselves. Their bones nourished the soil. Their deaths created space. Their absence allowed possibility. In a way, dinosaurs didn't just dominate the past, they built the present. And every animal alive today, from elephants to songbirds, carries a bit of the blueprint left behind. Life, it seems, never forgets a good idea. A memory carved into every mountain range. Mountains seem eternal, but even they whisper of ancient lives. Dinosaur bones have been found high in alpine ranges, carried there not by climbing, but by time, by the folding of Earth's crust, the rising of seabeds, the grinding of tectonic plates. It means the world doesn't just change in surface ways, it rearranges its memory. Where once was a swamp, now stands a desert. Where a raptor once hunted, now there's snow. Yet the bones remain, trapped in cliffsides, embedded in stone faces, waiting for the wind to wear them free again. So when you see a mountain, know it may be a tomb, and somewhere, inside, a tale still curls in sleep. The invisible threads between us and them. The distance between us and dinosaurs seems endless. Millions of years, whole eras, shifting continents, evolution upon evolution. But look closer, and the threads connect. They breathe the same air, just older. They felt hunger, cold, protection. They raised their young, migrated, dreamed maybe. And we, though clothed in tools and words, are still animals, still creatures of rhythm, survival, memory. We look into their fossils not just to understand them, but to understand ourselves. What lasts? What vanishes? What matters? It's not about scale, or teeth, or wings. It's about the story, and how, somehow, we are still in it. And that matters more than science can explain. How dinosaurs faced their first winters. Before the end came change. Climate didn't collapse overnight. Seasons began to shift. Winters became colder, unfamiliar, harder. Dinosaurs, born in a world of warmth, now faced frost on leaves, ice on water, a sun that showed up late, and some tried to adapt. Feathers thickened, behaviours shifted. Some may have hibernated, others migrated. Fossils from colder regions show dinosaurs near the poles, not fleeing, but staying, surviving. Imagine a herd gathered in snow-dusted forests, moving slower, tighter, looking for food under frozen soil, sleeping in circles for warmth. It's not how we pictured them, but it's how they lasted, until they couldn't. And those early winters, they weren't the end, but they were the beginning of the end. Why some species never grew wings. As some dinosaurs shrank, lightened, and took to the sky, others stayed grounded. They didn't evolve into birds, They didn't leap or glide. They kept their feet on soil, their balance in bulk. Not because they failed, but because evolution isn't about flight. It's about fit, survival, what works in the moment. Ankylosaurs stayed armoured. Hadrosaurs kept their flat bills. Ceratopsians held onto their horns. Each had found a rhythm with the earth, one that didn't require leaving it. We often glorify wings, but grounded species had their own kind of poetry. In steps, in roots, in presence. They moved through forests, not above them, heard the heartbeat of the land before the sky ever noticed. And perhaps that was enough, because not every creature needs to fly. Some are born to belong right where they are. If dinosaurs had human eyes, what did they see? Not with human emotions, but with clarity we'll never have. Their eyes were tuned to survival, motion, distance, patterns. A single twitch in the grass could signal life or danger. They didn't just see colour, they saw intention. Some had eyes on the sides of their heads, a wide view of the world. Others, like raptors, had forward-facing eyes. Depth, precision, focus. Imagine the sunrise through the eyes of a sauropod, warm light spilling across treetops, or the glint of moonlight in the eye of a predator, waiting under a fern's shadow. We don't know if they saw beauty like we do, but perhaps they sensed it in the shimmer of water, the shimmer of feathers, the rhythm of a moving herd. And maybe, if just once one dinosaur turned its gaze to the stars, it felt wonder too. The giant who sank in the mud and disappeared. Some stories are remembered by accident. In one fossil bed, we find the bones of a single massive creature, a titanosaur, so large it would have shaken the ground. But here, it's alone, stuck in a deep layer of ancient mud. What happened? Maybe the ground gave way beneath it, a hidden swamp. One wrong step, and the weight of its own body became its undoing. The more it struggled, the deeper it sank. There are no bite marks, no signs of attack, just gravity, time and quiet. We often imagine dinosaurs falling in battles or storms, but sometimes the end comes softly, silently. And now, millions of years later, its bones tell us this story, not of defeat, but of fragility. Even giants can fall, even mountains can sink, but even in that fall, something was preserved. A lesson, a presence, a ghost beneath the mud. What meteor dust still tells us today. The dust never really left. All over the earth, in cliffs, in seabeds, in ancient lakes, scientists find a thin layer, just a few centimeters thick, but it holds iridium, a rare metal, more common in asteroids than on Earth. This layer is the scar of impact. The evidence of that day the sky fell, and in laboratories this dust tells us things bones cannot. Its chemical fingerprint matches meteorites from space. It tells us how hot the Earth burned, how far the debris spread, how long it stayed dark. You can hold a spoonful of this dust in your hand and know this was everywhere. It touched the oceans. It rained across forests. It settled into the feathers of birds that somehow lived. It's more than a clue. It's a bridge, a thread between sky and ground, between past and present. Because even the air we breathe today carries a memory of that moment, a world where dinosaurs kept living in our minds. Even though they're gone, dinosaurs are everywhere. In museum halls, in bedtime books, in playgrounds, in dreams. They walk with us through childhood, return to us in wonder, rest quietly in corners of curiosity we never outgrow. Artists paint them, writers give them personalities, children pretend to be them, and scientists chase their shadows with scanners and chisels. They've become something more than real, they've become eternal. No other extinct creature has such a place in the human mind. Mammoths don't spark the same fire. Saber-tooths don't stir the same thrill. But dinosaurs, feel cosmic, larger than life, just close enough to imagine, just far enough to long for. We've given them voices, feathers, names, dreams, and in doing so, they've become part of our story too, the debate over cloning the past. Science has started whispering strange possibilities. If we find preserved DNA, could we bring one back? Could we clone a dinosaur? Some say yes, not now, but soon. The technology is creeping forward. Pieces of ancient genes have been found. Not enough yet, but tempting. The question is no longer just, can we, but should we? Would a dinosaur even belong in today's world? Could it survive? Would it suffer? Would it thrive? Or are some things meant to stay memory? The idea excites many, but it also invites caution, because the past isn't a pet. It's a force, a weight, a wildness that we may not fully understand. Maybe we don't need to bring them back in flesh. Maybe honoring them in story, in discovery, in reverence is enough. Because some echoes are loudest when left in peace. The stillness of prehistoric time. Before clocks, before calendars, there was only the stillness. Time in the dinosaur age didn't tick, it drifted, slowly, patiently, measured by migration, by shadow, by the changing of leaves. It was a rhythm so vast, so deep, that it didn't rush anything. Creatures didn't know they were ancient, they just lived, and died, and changed. It's hard for us now, with screens and alarms and seconds, but if you stand in the middle of a quiet forest or by a cliff where fossils sleep, you can feel it. That old, slow breath, the heartbeat of time before time had a name. And it reminds us, not everything needs to move quickly to matter. Some truths unfold, only in stillness. How the moon watched it all unfold. Above all of it, every footprint, every roar, every fallen tree, the moon watched. It was there when the first dinosaur opened its eyes. It was there when volcanoes cracked the sky. It was there when the asteroid fell, and when silence followed. The moon doesn't change quickly. It's been looking down day after day, age after age, seeing life bloom and vanish, without saying a word. Maybe some dinosaurs looked up at it too. Maybe they paused before sleep, blinked, and wondered about that glowing orb. Maybe they felt its pull in tides and instinct, and now we look at it through glass, through cameras, through childhood wonder, and forget. It watched them just like it watches us. Quiet, faithful, eternal. The secret of evolution's patience. If there's one thing dinosaurs teach us, it's this. Nature is patient. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It tries again and again. Some creatures last a season, some last millions of years. But evolution never stops. It experiments, waits, adjusts, from bone to feather, from land to sky, from extinction to rebirth. Even after the asteroid, when the world dimmed and cooled, life didn't give up. It just began again, quieter, smaller, more cautious, and slowly, life came back, one leaf, one breath, one heartbeat at a time, because evolution doesn't need perfection, it just needs persistence and time. What dinosaurs still whisper in our dreams, they visit us, in dreams, in stories, in pictures drawn by sleepy children, in the quiet awe that fills a room when a skeleton stands tall in a museum's light. Dinosaurs still whisper, not in words, but in feelings. That strange pull in the chest when you imagine a world before us. That softness in the throat when you realize how long ago they walked and how much we still remember. They don't haunt us. They don't want to return. They simply remind us that life is vast, that time is deep, that even giants can vanish and still be loved. And so they sleep beneath our feet. In the end, the dinosaurs are still here, not walking, not hunting, but sleeping gently, deeply beneath hills, deserts, oceans, and time. Their bones rest curled in layers of stone. Their memories are etched in mountains. Their breath lingers in birds. Their silence hums beneath every step we take. And every once in a while, someone finds a fossil, brushes away the dust, and hears them again. Not with ears, but with wonder. And in that moment, the dinosaurs wake, not to roar, but to remind us that nothing, truly nothing, is ever lost.